What was God's response for Israel's refusal to enter Canaan? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Numbers on Walking Through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Numbers 14. We're going to be reading from verses 11 to 19. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Numbers chapter 14, beginning at verse 11. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will these people reject me? And how long will they not believe me with all the signs which I have performed among them? I will strike them with the pestilence and disinherit them, and I will make of you a nation greater and mightier than they." And Moses said to the Lord, "Then the Egyptians will hear it, for by your might you brought these people up from among them, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, Lord, are among these people, that you, Lord, are seen face to face, and your cloud stands above them, and you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day, and a pillar of fire by night. Now if you kill these people as one man, then the nations will have heard of your fame and will speak, saying, 'Because the Lord was not able to bring this people to the land which he swore to give them, therefore he killed them in the wilderness. And now I pray, let the power of my Lord be great, just as you have spoken, saying, the Lord is long-suffering and abundant in mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression. But he by no means clears the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation. Pardon the iniquity of this people, I pray, according to the greatness of your mercy, just as you have forgiven this people from Egypt, even until now.'" Israel's in Kadesh, not too far from the promised land. They have received the report on the land that indeed it is just as God has promised, a land flowing with milk and honey, meaning a very good land to live in. However, 10 of the 12 spies concluded that they could not take the land because the cities were well fortified and there were giants in the land that they couldn't defeat. Only Caleb and Joshua said otherwise. Israel had a choice: side with the overwhelming majority opinion and not take Canaan, or side with Joshua and Caleb, trust in God and take the promised land. In our last lesson, they chose to side with the majority. Having thus spurned God, who had brought them out of Egypt for this very purpose, today we read of God's response. And it is, as you would expect, one of anger. God had freed Israel from cruel Egyptian bondage through inflicting the 10 plagues on Egypt. He led Israel out of Egypt, allowing them to miraculously cross the Red Sea. He then led them to Mount Sinai, providing them with water from a rock and manna from heaven along the way. He provided them the law, and they built the tabernacle. Just recently, he provided them with enough quail to feed the entire nation, almost 2 million people in size, for a month. They had seen numerous miracles done by God for their benefit, and yet, because they saw some obstacles ahead, thought that these were too great for God. They forgot that God had delivered them from the Amalekites, an army that should have beaten them. The memory of Israel was short here, and their faith was barely existent. Instead, they desired to return to Egypt and were in the process of selecting a leader to do that. As a result of that rebellion, God wanted to dispossess them of their land and make a great nation out of Moses. This is the second time that God desired to do this as a result of Israel's sin, the first being in Exodus 32, when Israel worshipped the golden calf. And God had every right to do this. First of all, the wages of sin is death. Now this death is spiritual death, but sometimes our sins are so grievous that physical death results too. This decision by Israel, just like with the golden calf, showed Israel's outright rejection of God. It was unlike when they complained for food or water, which showed a lack of faith. Israel wanted to abandon God and return to Egypt. God was thus fully justified in his actions, and had he taken it, would not have broken his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for Moses was still their descendant. However, it would likely have taken another couple hundred years to accomplish, just like it had with Abraham to Moses. But just like it was with Sinai, Moses pleaded with God for mercy on Israel's behalf. His appeal can really be broken down into 2 parts. In the first part, Moses appealed to God's reputation. He had brought Israel out of Egypt with a mighty hand, and yet was willing to destroy them in the wilderness. The nations around about would not have known the reason why, so would have assumed that God was unable to bring them to Canaan, and then destroyed them. As we know, a lie travels faster and is believed easier than the truth. So such a charge would have affected God's reputation as an all-powerful God. Now that alone wouldn't be enough cause for God to relent, because God was a God of justice and has shown his omnipotence to people so that they are without excuse. So Moses coupled his argument by appealing to God's mercy. Moses asked God for his mercy to be great, for he had in the past spoken that he was a long-suffering and abundant in mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression. Although Moses is not quoting here, he's likely referring to Exodus 34, verses 6 and 7. He's asking God thus to show Israel mercy once again for their sins, as he had in the past since they left Egypt. It is important to note that Moses isn't asking God not to punish Israel. He's simply asking not for God to destroy them. Acting as a mediator, Moses was hoping that God could find a way to appease his divine justice while at the same time showing mercy to those who didn't deserve it. What would God's response to Moses be? We'll find out in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Numbers 14, verses 20 to 25, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.